Living stories. My life consists of a series of stories with me as the main character. Now in my 80s, these stories of past adventures keep me company. When my memory fails, I just fill in a few details to spark things up a bit. Maybe my old friend Nancy will tolerate the me version of our joint exploits. In the mid-50s, Nancy and I were best friends, roommates, and freshly graduated. Enough of books, I said. Let's do something different. How different? Oh, I don't know. Something outdoorsy. Something far away from Toronto. I'm not a canoeist, Nancy shrugged. I can't even ride a bike. Walking I might manage. How about hiking somewhere we've never been? Our subsequent plan to explore the trails in the Blue Mountains of Vermont seemed suitably challenging, as we would have to hitchhike to get there. What do you think we will need? The bare minimum to fit into a backpack, plus a bedroll. According to this map, there are rest shelters along the way. Maybe proper hiking boots? Yes, and rain gear just in case. I have a maple leaf patch to sew on our backpacks. Great. That should help us getting rides in the U.S. We packed, discarded, and repacked. Think of the weight, I cautioned. Yes, say yes to thick socks, moleskin, one change of clothes, a small flashlight, and plastic utensils. We never even thought of mace, and certainly not a gun. It was a trusting time. Our first mistake was to set out in the early spring. Things went well on the road as rides were frequent and friendly. However, when May turned unusually cold and relentlessly damp, once on the trail, it rained and rained some more. We were novices, and our new leather boots squished as we tried to cross what looked like only rivulets on our trail map. This is a torrent, Nancy complained as she teetered on mossy rocks. Oh well, we might as well slosh through the water. My socks are soaked anyway. Some hours later, we dragged ourselves into a pretty well-washed little village, saw a B&B sign on a white gate, and approached hopefully. The startled hostess opened her door a crack, took one look at us, and waved us in. We stood dripping on her hallway carpet. So sorry, Nancy murmured. The unflappable landlady put the kettle on and ordered us to strip. Whatever were you thinking? She chided. Do you have any dry clothes? Canadians, I see. Do you hike in the rain up there? No matter, we have a dryer in the basement. 2 days later, the rain relented. The trails won't dry out for weeks, Nancy stated. We need a plan B. You are so right. I've been thinking about it. My sister Margaret is studying in Boston. We could surprise her with a visit. That beats going home. I've never been to Boston. We had fun hitching this far. Let's give it a try. Boston, here we come. As it turned out, Plan B could have benefited from a bit of research. Things went well at first. Drivers seemed glad of company and also a bit curious when they spotted the maple leaves. Our most memorable ride came when a very large black vehicle passed us, then pulled to the side of the road. It was unmistakably a hearse. We stared, then inched forward. Hop in the back, invited the young couple up front. Lots of room. There isn't a body back there, just a baby, and she is very much alive." We cautiously eased open the hatch door. "You first," I said as we crawled in. Sure enough, a tiny girl in a bassinet beamed up at us, keeping us entranced until she drifted into sleep. When the family reached their destination, we thanked the young parents, who burst out laughing. "Not everyone would think of a second-hand hearse as a bargain," I countered. "Touché, and good luck." One late morning, Nancy had her thumb out while I was rummaging for some chocolate cookies in my knapsack. A black car with a distinguishing white stripe ground to a stop on the gravel behind us. A tall cop eased himself out and eyed us up and down. "What have we here?" "Young ladies, please be my guest," as he directed us to the back seat of the cruiser. It seemed that we had progressed to Massachusetts, and it was illegal to hitchhike in that state. At the police station, we were also suspected of being underage, likely running away from home. The interrogation began, directed first to Nancy, who unfortunately had a tendency to clam up when confronted with authority. "Where were you born?" My heart sank. Oh no, I thought. Is this going to be a second time I might be threatened with jail in the land of the free? Lowering her eyes, Nancy replied quietly, "Japan." "What? I thought you were Canadian." "My mother was in Japan," Nancy explained helpfully. "What did your father do? Was he in the army?" "No." "Was he in business?" "No." "Well, what did your father do?" "He was a missionary." With a shake of his head, the chief turned to me in a mocking tone and asked, "And I suppose you were born in Japan and your father was a missionary?" "That's right," I agreed. By this time, 2 more officers sidled into the room, curious about the raised voice of their chief. Disbelief in his eyes, their boss leaned towards us in his swivel chair to demand, "Let's see your identification." This did take some sorting out, as both Nancy and I had indeed been born in Japan. Nancy was able to produce a birth certificate. My only proof of existence was a very official embassy in Tokyo, where I had been duly registered, as there was no Canadian embassy in Japan at that time. Unfortunately, it was dated well after my birth date. Nevertheless, the well-worn paper firmly stated that I was a British subject. Not automatically Japanese? British subject? Unrelated, but both daughters of missionaries? How confusing and alarming to the Massachusetts constabulary. Maybe it was the word missionary that changed the tense atmosphere. The coffee pot was put on and extra chairs brought in. Gradually, the investigators became listeners as our explanations became stories within a story. "Tell you what," the chief finally suggested. "You girls, women, are so close to Boston now, if you hitchhike again and are picked up by the police, just ask them to deliver you to your sister in the city." "No way," I objected. "Where is the nearest bus terminal?" This was my second encounter with American authorities, understandably upset and suspicious about anything to do with Japan. Soon after Pearl Harbor, Mother and I attempted to join my father in New York City, where he had secured a job. U.S. immigration assumed, because of my birthplace, that I was automatically a Japanese citizen. They threatened to detain me at the border as an enemy alien. How ridiculous, my mother spluttered. She's only 8 years old. Perhaps it was my pigtails or the logistics of imprisoning such a young suspect, but my mother and common sense prevailed. Even now, I can still remember the thrill it was for me to be considered a potentially dangerous spy.